Okay, everybody, welcome and thank you for your patience. Waiting on me. Let's see if everybody can hear me okay today. Did the sound hold up completely yesterday? Did it? For the most part? For most of you? Yes, and I'm aware that everything is happening today, it seems. Very odd day. What do you guys say? Very odd day, everything is happening. All right, guys, I have a question for you guys. In the world, all these things that are happening are stemming from one point. Do you guys know what that is? Something everybody suffers from. Something that is magnified in this society. Something you see every single day. Something I see every single day. But it's from one source, one psychological disorder, it seems. Right? Only from one. It's the same reason people say I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. Same reason people do extreme things. It's one of the number one causes of depression. It is. Causes people not to understand. And believe it or not, through this one thing, you have people, right? Handful of people, probably, most likely, that somewhat govern things, right? Govern everything. It's kind of like the Rothschilds. Anybody know who they are? Rothschilds. They were in Europe. They began a bank. They began to lend to all different people, right? And there were sons of the original Rothschilds, and they were known as, all these different places like France and Germany and all these. They had children that would govern these places with their banks, lending money. And it became so big that they began to loan to countries. You guys remember that. And so they amassed power. Then they kind of vanished, right? They still do the same thing. Same principle, same everything. But how do they work so well? How does a person get to a point where they flatline that much, where they would need somebody's services like that, where they, don't care about oversight of the individuals, this and the other? Or in the Rothschilds, I think that a lot of people by way of rumors, right? Because the Rothschilds are Jewish. Do you guys know that? They are of Jewish descent, and I believe that's why a lot of people have a high disdain for Jewish people, not really understanding, what was happening. Kind of like that guy in 1748 who found that book. He found a code in a book, and of course that code has been somewhat revealed. Most people don't know it, but still, we go back to the number one problem people have. It is so simple, yet it can't be conquered, it seems. It can't be conquered because you'd never think as this being a major problem for just about everything. Because if that were removed, do you know what would happen? There would be instant peace, respect, all sorts of good qualities would travel around the earth. It's one of the same reasons people believe in a flat earth. Have you ever talked to a person who believes in flat earth? When I was 18 years old, I actually was introduced to that idea. I was. And you know what else? When I was 18, I got obsessed with that idea. I did. See, at that time, they didn't have, stringent regulation on rockets. You guys remember those model rockets with the A through D motors? And you would send the rockets up, but you had no way to take pictures. And then all of a sudden later on, they released those throwaway cameras. You guys remember the throwaway cameras? And nothing is stopping a person from actually, spending about $100, getting what's necessary to send something right up through there. Nothing is stopping them. And take pictures. Nothing is stopping anybody from doing that. It isn't. Of course, when it gets up so high, they're going to spot it, look at it, and there you go. But You know what I mean? Nothing is stopping people from doing that. And believe it or not, back in the 70s and 80s, they had some people that actually did that. It's just not popular these days, right? But this idea and all these different ideas about, things that really are not going to impact a person's life, they're causing people headaches, anger, frustration for one reason. It's the same reason people have to go to the bottom of the ocean, right? It's the same reason people would risk their lives to go to the deepest parts of the ocean. Same thing. Same reason. Why they search and search. Because let's go ahead and face something. If somebody went up in the atmosphere, I've been up over the atmospheres, just about. I've been up there. That's why I don't discuss it. I've been up there. A lot of people have been up there. And it does no need to discuss it. There's no need, right? There's no need. If it were daytime outside, and you went outside and people said, this is not daytime, this is nighttime. You only think you see daytime. You'd say, okay. That's what you would say. Because in truth, when you know something, you never argue about it. When you know something. When you don't know something, you speculate. And in this day and age, you have to know it. There is a thirst to have to know it. And do you guys know what the original secret society was? Anybody? What started all this secret society stuff? Do you guys know where it came from? Egypt. They did it. With their priesthood. And their priesthood was based on science. Science is what they kept secret. Science is what they put into their, whatever the working, science goes into the craft itself. Do you know that? So you can go back to Egypt. I'm talking about some of the first civilizations in Egypt, and they put together a secret society, which was part of their priesthood, because they were working with strange creatures and things like that, yes. But they had a secret society. And what it means is they knew the truth about science. They knew about electricity, right? They wrote their in the scrolls, you can clearly see that they had broken down the atom. So the atom was not discovered, recently. This is something very, very old. The other places are India. India, in those temples, they described what we know as particle physics. It's a mandate that if you go into science, if you get serious about science, you're going to learn about the Vedic text. You have to read them about the Mahabharata and all these things, that ancient history, because they know the truth of it, right? But the truth is simple. It's very simple. It's just very mysterious these days, right? Because everybody can speak. And so the opinion about these things is everywhere, all because of one thing. Here it is. I'm going to tell you without telling you and see if you can figure it out. The problem of problems. You ready? When a person is inside, they hear something outside, like a loud boom. What will irritate a person? What normally happens when somebody hears something very loud outside? Imagine they hear something loud. They can't see out the window, and the door won't open. How many of you would get irritated? If you heard a loud sound outside, you were inside eating or something like that, and a very loud sound was outside, but you could not see out of your windows, and the door would not open. Would you be happy? How many of you would be happy? You'd likely not be happy, right? You would be what? What's the key word? You would not be content. It would ruin you being content. So you would not be content anymore. You wouldn't. You would not be content until you could find out what made that loud noise. When a person, right? When a person is, when they're going to the bottom of the ocean, why are they doing that? Is it really for advancement of humanity? Or is it because they're not content with what they've seen on the surface? Think about it. Think about it. When you get a cell phone, correct? Are you content with it knowing the phone features and chat features? or must you know what else is going on? A lot of people are driven because they're not content. Now, here's what that means. That means if you're given something, a set of circumstances, all of you have been given a set of circumstances. Let's say you have a job, you have a home, right? And all of us understand, I want you guys to kind of interact with this, but you've had you guys have had a job, home, income, your house, and everything was fine in the beginning. You guys remember that? In the beginning, everything was fine. You really had no problems, right? Nothing was wrong. You had your job, right? You had your apartment, whatever it was. It may not have had the best furniture in there, but you had that, and you were eating. But what was on your mind? What was on your mind? Was it to stay in that apartment for the rest of your life? No, that's not what it was. You would be there in that place, and guess what would happen? You would look around and say, I've got to have more. I've got to build this up. I got to work on this. I got to just, have some decorations here and have this here and have this here and have this here. So in truth, as soon as you get something, you're already thinking about how you can improve it, how you can customize it, how you can make it better than it was, right? And that leaves a person without contentment. There's no contentment. This is a biblical principle that's supposed to be a quality that we don't have anymore. And it is one of the root causes, according to the Word of God, according to quite a few prophets. It is the root problem of us. It is one of the root problems of us. It is connected to just about everything, is that we are not content. And when we're not content, what do? We venture out and we start doing all sorts of things. If a person goes out and commits a string of crimes, they always say the same thing, right? They always say the same thing. They don't like something. So they go out and kill somebody because they don't like something. They always have the same backstory, too, for the most part. They do. And it's so interesting how it comes back to a person not being content. In other words, when you're given something, right, it's never enough. It is never enough. You know what the Lord told that, he told that soldier? The soldier said, what must I do? What must I do? I'm a soldier, what must I do? I've already killed people, this, that, and the other. What must I do? You know what Jesus said? Be content with your wages. Exact no more than what you've been commanded to do. How hard do you think that was to keep? Be content with your wages and exact no more than you've been commanded to do. That means if somebody tells you go and get a prisoner, you don't twist his arm, right? You don't talk to him and demean him and do things like that. And when the Lord said, be content with your wages, you know what causes a soldier to be a corrupt soldier? Promotion. To get promotion, right? It means more money, yes. And a lot of promotions, this idea of promotions among enlisted ranks is normally driven by money. When you get in the commission ranks, normally that's driven by prestige, by power, by authority. If a person should be content, and they would be smooth in their escalations with contentment, those become very good leaders. Ambitious leaders can be dangerous. Normally are, right? Normally are. In America's leadership, you have a lot of what? They're not content with where they are. They're not content. They're not content. And so what do? Because they're not content? There are telltale marks. When you're not content and you become aggressive behind you not being content, right? The number one thing you do is you begin to demean your current environment. You put it down you cast it down to the ground. You find everything wrong with it. And you make up 1,000 excuses why it has to change. How many of you live in a home? You look around and maybe you didn't realize it, but you found every problem in the world wrong with it to the point where it has gotten to you. How many? If you take a guy who has had no home, who has felt the harshness of the elements, who knows what it is to starve, right? You put that guy in a house with a broken couch, a TV that does not work, but he's in a home, he'll be content. He'll be thankful. But that thankfulness will change as soon as he looks at everybody else. Hear me on this. When he looks at everybody else, when he begins to compare his situation to everybody else's, he's no longer content. You hear me? Anybody ever do that? You start looking. How many have caught themselves looking at the rich and famous, right? Then all of a sudden when you're looking at the rich and famous, and it may take some time, it may not, but you start saying, well, I'd like to have something like that. And then you start thinking about it, like giving it these thoughts. Like, I wonder, could I ever get to that stage? I would love to be. What would I have to do? And then all of a sudden you catch yourself and you say, what am I doing? What am I doing? But then when you stop thinking like that and go back to your standard life, it's boring. It seems like it's substandard. That happens by way of comparison. That happens when we covet somebody else's stuff. The very thing the Lord said don't do. You know, God said don't do that. Don't covet your neighbor's stuff. In other words, don't look at your neighbor, right? And then all of a sudden, because his stuff is better than yours or her stuff is better than yours, you count yourself cursed. They're blessed. You all of a sudden want what they want. You start doing things to try and get what they want. And ironically, do you know what the world teaches you? The world teaches you how to perfectly covet things of everybody else. In fact, commerce is designed on covetousness. Do you know that? That's what marketing is for. They show you a pair of shoes, right? You have a perfect pair of shoes. How many people have more than 3 or 4 or 5 pair of shoes? Don't answer. But you see a pair of shoes. They describe it. They show you the benefits, and smiling people, all of a sudden, guess what? You accept it, create a need in your heart and in your mind, right? You cultivate that thing. A need is there. And now, guess what you're doing? You're saying, hey, I have to have that, so I have to spend this money on that because it's a necessity. Everybody needs shoes, right? All of that begins with what? Not being content with what you have. Because if you looked in your own closet and the shoes you have not worn for a year, you take them out and clean them up. If you clean them up, take them out and clean them up, and then do another pair, take them out and clean them up, you'll find out you have enough. The problem is, by comparing yourself to somebody else's lifestyles, to somebody else, period, you'll never have enough. You'll never have enough. And this has in turn raised the debt level of just about everybody, because that's how we operate. They give you credit cards, right? You get a credit card. Now, if anybody watches their credit, you understand that if you don't use that credit card, your credit score is going to go down. Why? Because you have a credit limit, but your spending ratio to that credit limit is not right, and so your credit score is going to go down. As soon as you charge an item, guess what happens? It goes back up again. They throw 6 points on there. And you're like, what? I got 6 extra points. If you have a credit over 8, if you have credit over, say like $799, $800, something like that, then we add 1 point to it. But if you don't charge anything, you're going to go down about 10 to 15 points. And you can say, what in the world is happening here? It's because they have extended your credit, but you refuse to use it. Anybody ever think they were doing the right thing by paying their credit card off? Right? You pay it off. You say, I'm done with that. Good. I've paid my debts, and your credit score goes down. Anybody ever see that before? The world is designed not after the Father, right? But after something else. It is based to keep your life interesting. You know that, don't you? And everybody suffers from the same mental condition. They're not content. The Lord gives you knowledge, doesn't he? The Lord gives you knowledge. He supplies all of your needs according to his riches and glory, which, by the way, will never run out. So he supplies all of your needs. And if all of your needs are supplied, what's wrong with us? Why would we ever venture over into other things? Because we're not content with what we already have. You see how this is a systemic problem into every area of our lives? You see that? It permeates everything, and it's reinforced every time you log on to the internet, every time you see a commercial, every time you go out and look at that McDonald's sign, it is reinforced everywhere until society runs that way. And it becomes normal to covet everything you see, to have an appetite for everything you see, until it gets to the point where the entire world is not content and everybody covets something. Because the moment you are content, the moment you stop coveting, that's the moment. It's almost like you're resettled. That's the moment when everything changes. That's also the moment when you really realize, I'm an outsider. That's when you see the losses in the world that are never realized. Isn't that something? The same thing that gifts us to see where we are, to see how we walk and all that, is the same thing that causes us to go astray. God gave us a spirit, and a born-again spirit, so that we could take the blessings that he has given us, like the ability to see, the ability to hear, the ability to eat, to speak, and all these different things, and we won't corrupt them. If we're not operating by the Spirit of the Most High, the same eyes that can be utilized for blessings that do bless us to help other folks can become a tool of evil, of corruption for ourselves. And it's not that anybody is forcing us to do anything. I want you to take careful note of this. In truth, Satan is not forcing anybody to do anything. It's impossible for him to force you to do anything. Satan has never forced any of you to do anything. Never. But by way of our environment, he has bombarded us with his message. And I say his message because he's speaking through a lot of different people. We're not actually covered by the blood of the Lamb, right? It's kind of like the, what's that group called? The Illuminati, right? You guys know the difference between the Illuminati and Freemasonry? Maybe, maybe not. They're both real. But the Illuminati is more of a name tag than anything else. It has a different name. People call it the Illuminati, and people start fearing the Illuminati. They do. They start fearing it because they don't know its capabilities. Illuminati is based on scholars. It's based on bankers. It's based on philosophies. It's based on science. Right? Freemasonry is based on the building of mankind. Did you know that? You know that? Now, you have groups, other groups, right? They do weird things. They do weird things. Some people go overboard and they start doing real devilish things. But in truth, it's nothing more than what we've been seeing. You're already used to both. You know both very well. So if I were to speak a different name, you would say, that's what they are? If I were to sit down for 2 hours and describe Freemasonry, right, and give you 3 of their secrets, and describe the Illuminati, and give you 1 of their secrets, you would say, really? I already knew that. Well, of course you did. But you're captivated by the names, the mystique. That's the mystique. Same thing Satan does. Satan took something God made. Listen to me. Satan took something God made and cursed humanity with it. Didn't he? He sure did. He took a tree of good and evil that God made, and he cursed humanity with it. Why? Because humanity was not content at the time, and they were induced, or they were introduced into that tree, right? Satan induced a desire into them, and they just had to have it. Somebody says, what's 33rd degree Mason? Well, you have... Actually, I have 12 degrees. There's Scottish Rite Illuminati. Some people know things by what they've read or heard somebody else give, right? That's one thing. I'm not talking about that, most of that. Because a lot of that stuff is stuff that people catch from time to time. Truth is, there are certain levels to these groups, right? These levels are nothing more than the structure of what people used to know as the Babylonian priesthood, right? That's what it is, Babylonian priesthood. And they have those same things. Let's take a secret, for instance, for the Freemasonry, for example. One of the secrets of the Freemasonry that they believe in is that they are really righteous. Listen to me, that they're righteous, right? That internally they're good. But at the heart of man, all people are good. But they're here to get the negative elements out of society their way, so that only the good shows forward. That's above a certain level. And they are at work right now. They're always at work. That's why I always tell people they're doing exactly what people want them to do. It's kind of like setting a table up for children. They come and eat, right? The person who makes the food, they know how the food was made, but if they don't set the table, the one who sets the table is going to know who gets what. They'll both contributed. The children are the subjects. And they come to the table and eat. All the preparations, at that point, they don't matter. Who did what does not matter. It only matters that they consume the end result. The Freemasons are the same way. And they use everything in creation and everything in philosophy and everything in all these different elements, right, to keep themselves in this weird way. But at the heart of them, guess what they do? At the highest levels, guess who their contact is? Guess who their guidance is? The king of the world. Do you guys know who the king of the world is? Lucifer, the real Lucifer. Do you hear me? The real Lucifer. The real Lucifer. Just about every other song that's ever been famous, you're going to hear a reference to lights. You're going to hear keywords that let you know what they're actually worshiping, because nobody who's going to make money in this world is going to go outside Freemasonry. Most of what people know as the Illuminati, right, is actually Freemasonry at work. Notice how they don't say, no, they don't give you and tell you Illuminati headquarters. That's not what they do, right? That's a name that people give people without knowing who they're giving it to. Freemasonry is everywhere. Freemasonry is responsible for, here it goes, this will hit you right in the heart. Do you know what this competitive buying that we practice, I'm not going to use the politically correct name for that, can't do that, but this habit of buying and selling that we have is authored by Freemasonry. Do you know that? They're behind it. They run it. They control it. They make the rules. People abide by the rules. And they participate in rituals every time they make a deal. And the deal is followed by an entity. This is what you don't know. When they go, because they have crafts that they do, right? Like, for example, in Egypt. They practiced a lot of building techniques, correct? Building techniques in Egypt. Babylon, same thing, building techniques. And so what they do is they attach their god to whatever they do. Now, hear me on this. That means Lucifer's attached to everything built. Why? Why would they ever do that? So that if you go and inhabit that place, a house that Lucifer built, his spirit is attached to it. You become a working element of Lucifer, not even knowing it. You become a working element of Lucifer, even if you're in pure denial, right? You become a working element of Lucifer if you do anything that is already set in that place. By your agreement to do something in a designed way, right? Then you're in agreement with how it works if you utilize it and give no protest. You're in agreement to how it works, like a grocery store. Yeah, it's pretty simple, isn't it? Grocery store. But you go in a grocery store, you agree to go through a sliding door. You agree to take certain things off the shelf and put them in your buggy, your bag, or whatever it is. You agree to allowing yourself and go to the checkout, go through that process, right? You agree to this because for the average person, that's the way they get food. So what if that place were dedicated to Lucifer? and it were an actual temple because they built it. And they were the ones who designate that as a temple of Satan. See, if they put temple of Satan on your grocery store, you would not use it, would you? But what do they put? What do they put? They put the name of a store. They don't put grocery store, do they? They put a name like Kroger, right? They put Kroger up there. They put Food Lion. They put all these names up there. So you go into a place that you know nothing about, and you follow the rules, and you shop there, and you get the stuff. You're in agreement, no protest. You come out, you're participating. Because if they dedicated that place, right? If they really anointed that place, there's going to be a spiritual attachment in that place. Have you ever known on Sunday what happens on Sunday in every grocery store? Why is it on Sunday in every grocery store you see a drunk? You start to see people who have had enough, don't you? It's a different atmosphere on Sundays in every grocery store. It's pretty subtle, but it's there. And why is it that a person is more prone to buy beer on a Sunday than any other day of the week in a grocery store? Why Sunday? Why not Saturday? Why not Friday? Why Sunday? Directly after church, they make most sales for beers. And have you noticed how they, at one point, set the hours after church you could buy beer? Why sell it in the first place? Why make it after church you can buy beer? So that their anointing can be higher than the one you previously got. So you can nullify what you just received of the Lord in a house or a house of God. Go into one of these places and partake of a ritual you don't know about. And then there you go. This is how they work. Whether you believe that or not, that's how they do. It's inescapable. All you have to do is look up the ownership of every single place. You're going to find that they're utilizing somebody's money that's also dedicated. Dedicated. Do you know every dollar bill is dedicated? Do you know that? Some sort of incantation is over money. Has anybody ever gotten a lump sum? Now let's put this to the test. You ready? And this is something, if you don't, I know about the spirit attached to money. I already know about it. I know it. You can have no money one day, right? Or have, but possibly, say if you had $500 today and you had no bills. None whatsoever. No responsibility, no bills. What are you going to do with that $500? Somebody would say, well, I can find a way to use it. Let me tell you what would happen. You ready? Here's what would happen. If you had no bills, in all probability, unless you have more than that on a usual basis, the high probability is that you're going to be pestered. You're going to be pestered. Something's going to eat at your mind until you give in. You're going to start looking through things. You're going to start shopping until you find something you can rationalize as a need. Once you see that need, you're going to get it. Thinking you're going to feel better. Why is it that you think you're going to feel better when you buy something? Where's that coming from? Ladies, come on, ladies. It hits you most of all, ladies. It does. You actually think that if you go get something brand new, you're going to feel better. Now, you may not have told a soul about that, but the Holy Spirit is real, right? Holy Spirit is real, so no need to hide that. No need to hide it. You really do think it's going to solve your problems, but if you do something, let's analyze this. What spirit would ever make you think that? Somebody says, insecurity. No, that's a spirit. Think about it. That's a spirit. Because it happens, it has nothing to do with insecurity. You can be the most secured person on earth. And if you get money to spend, it's going to gnaw at your mind. It's like a fly that won't go away. It's a fly that you can spray all day and it won't die. Right? It'll fester in your mind. Now, some people have had their fill of it to the point a defense mechanism comes up. When they get money, they make it a point not to look at things brand new. They do. When you partake of spiritual activity, there will be an effect, whether you believe in that or not. There will be an effect. When you have a lot of money, you're going to deal with a lot of spirits. A lot of spirits. Has anybody ever gotten a large lump sum? And you were kind-hearted and generous when you first got the money, right? Here's the process. You start spending the money. All of a sudden, halfway through, you take a look at the money, and it's dwindling fast. And then immediately you start to withdraw. Well, I can't do this, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. You start telling yourself what you can't do. People may ask you for help, and it starts to get to you. I can't do that. Can't do that. Because if I do that, I'm going to run out, not going to have. And then you find yourself in a mindset trying to do everything to keep what you got. But you yourselves will tell everybody else, you can't do that. But you will shop the rest of that money away if you're not careful. Because that same spirit is going to gnaw at you. Now, when all the money is gone, so is the spirit. Now, follow me on this. The spirit is gone when the money is gone. And all of a sudden, when the spirit is gone, you may have pressing issues, but you're not dealing with the spirit that came with that money. How many have been sensitive enough to notice that? That in your times where you did not have money, right? When you didn't have money, you didn't deal with a specific spirit. But when you had money, you had to deal with a specific spirit. You know, there are people out there in New York right now, they choose to live on the street. They choose because they don't want to deal with the money. They say money is evil. These are the same people that say money is evil. We're talking about billionaires. Have you ever seen a billionaire? A homeless person in New York, but is actually a billionaire on purpose, and they refuse to be a part of society. I have a cousin that lives in New York. We were walking to Hard Rock Cafe, and he said, don't worry about that guy. That guy owns that bank up there. What bank? In that high rise, he owns that bank. Well, what the world's he doing down there, right? The guy even showed me a picture. Yep, that's that guy. What's he doing down there? He burned out. I said, well, what's that guy doing? He burned out too. He burned out too. They want nothing to do with society. Nothing. They don't want to mess with the money. The money gets to them. They can't take it for some reason. That was the strangest thing. And a lot of people don't even know that. You have millionaires, multimillionaires, and billionaires who are burnt out, living on the streets in New York on purpose because they want nothing to do with the money. My cousin further explained that the guilt sometimes, it gets so heavy. In a moment of clarity, it gets so heavy they can't deal with it. They see what they have done through the money, and they don't want to participate with it another day. But the problem is they just can't give it away. Once you have that much money, you just can't sign that over to anybody else. You can't do it. You can't do it. And the money that is under your name, it continues to do harm in society, and they want to disconnect from it totally. They just totally want to disconnect from it because they start seeing what the money is doing and what it's driving, especially in a place like New York. That happens a lot. Happens a lot. A whole lot. In our case, we don't even sometimes recognize a spirit goes with money. Now, here's what's funny. You have no money, all of a sudden you have a lot of money, and then you lose that money, and then guess what happens? You'll do anything to get that money back. You'll know you blew it, right? Isn't that what we say? Oh, I blew it. You'll know you blew it, but you want that money back. And if you're not careful, this is part of how the world works. To get that money back, right? You're going to start doing weird things, thinking in strange ways. All of this stems from not being content with what you had in the first place. God has a general principle. Here's the principle he uses, that if you are content with what you have and responsible with what you have, he'll add to it. He'll add to that. Do you know that? If you could be content, God will add to that. God teaches when he gives you something, right? You have to become immune to all the forces that are at that specific level of your inventory of what you have. And then once you can deal with that and still maintain righteousness, he'll add more to that. God will never overload you in a bunch of stuff. See, that would be stupidity to all of a sudden grant somebody millions of dollars because they would destroy themselves. Like these people who win the lottery. They win a lot of money, but they have no responsibility over themselves. And when they get into that, right, how do you go broke? How do you win $400 some million and go broke in less than 2 years, and you're $1 million, or was this one lady's $20 million in debt? She has no idea how that happened. There's a gentleman who was $300 million in debt. He had no idea how that happened. These people who win the lottery, right? They won the money, but because of their own discontentment, never going to work out for them, right? Just not going to work out for them because the spirit goes with money. Well, back to my original conversation. I'm telling you, a spirit is with the money because they dedicate the money. They dedicate that money. All money is dedicated. Every dime, every dollar, everything is dedicated. And what they do is they have a ceremony. They anoint all of what's being produced by these machines. You get the money, it starts changing things. That's weirdness, right? They do that stuff. They do it. They do it. They do it. It's kind of like the Super Bowl halftime, right? Halftime, things get very dark, and they love the color red, don't they? Love that color red, don't they? Strange, weird songs they're singing. In the Bible, it says that the wickedness that's during our times, certainly in the book of Daniel, that this individual or this spirit would cause craft to prosper. That word craft was directly relatable to what the Egyptians practiced, which was science with a spiritual seal. Same thing the Illuminati practices, science with a spiritual seal. Same thing. They call the truth, right? Here's what they call the truth. If they understand the formula for, let's say, the quadratic equations concerning when you're dealing with physics and something falling, right? And you have kind of an arc in mathematics showing that, reflecting that. If they knew that truth, they would add that truth in with some spiritual overtone to seal it, right? So then the truth that they have inside them, the secret, the actual secret they have, is the truth, which is actually science, put into some clever thing like marketing, some clever thing like, I don't know, some weird halftime show. So in their ceremonies, dedications, and common practices, they put the truth in there. And that's a secret because they know it, you don't know it. It mystifies you because you don't know how everything works. But they know the truth. Now, if you know the truth of how something is working, you can always sidestep it. You know what they say about everything that's made, right? They say of everything that's made, if it were only positively charged, nothing would ever be static. Everything would always be dynamic, changing, and it would perfectly interact with no damage. But because of negative forces, like electrons and stuff like that, right? Because they are negative, they cause things to be static, stand still. It makes wood, a tree, steel, right? But if everything were positive, all matter is different. All matter is interactive. There are no boundaries. Everything operates in freedom. So for those who know how to sidestep the negativity of life, right? They're going to have that greater advantage and live as kings and queens. Well, in these practices, because they know what is negative and they know what negativity does, they have based society in purposed negativities. That's what you live in. You can't escape your own depression. They don't have depression because they sidestep everything they planted. You don't know what they planted. You think reality is one way, and they operate in it a different way. But while they're doing this, the populace is doing everything they're expected to do. You're expected to believe that you have to wake up every morning, go to your job, make some money, do some work, whatever, come back home, and that's the way of that nation. They built that ideology into you. God didn't build that ideology into anybody. People made up that ideology. Think about it. Half the ways we practice in our respective nations, right, is just something given to us by people, by these groups, right, who, they mystify people by the way they work. They give us a cell phone. We use the cell phone. We're empowered by the cell phone, but we cannot replicate a cell phone. Correct? You can't make that cell phone. You can't do that. They make the cell phone. They know what's inside. You do not. You use what they have made. It empowers you. But it's also doing something else you don't know about, and so thus they hold the secret. And when you know that somebody has a secret that you don't know about that could potentially affect your life, it causes fear within you. And anybody who operates with the spirit of fear is now under full control. If you operate without fear, you cannot be controlled. If you operate with the slightest bit of fear, here's what you don't realize. Fear is not an emotion. Fear is you living with a duality. Fear is a response from the presence of a living entity. That's what fear is. And so when you live with fear, fear is a suggestion. Have you noticed? When you get scared of something, something is talking to you, isn't it? Think about it. Come on. Think about it. When you get frightened, when you get worried, something is talking to you. What is talking to you? What is amplifying these negative thoughts within you? You get frightened of the night. Something starts to speak. You could get hurt. You could get maimed. You could get kidnapped. You could lose everything. That's what it does. It's kind of like a person who, they have threats. Like you can give a person a threat and ruin their whole day. For example, you guys have had good days. You go and check the mailbox. Your day is good. Nothing is happening. You check the mailbox. There's a piece of mail in the mailbox. Now, that mail has been traveling for 4 days, and your life has not been affected. But as soon as you look at the message, your whole day crashes. Anybody ever have that? Nothing changed in your day. Simply by obtaining information, your day is ruined. For example, you're at home, you're having a good time, and then you get something in the mail, and they say, well, your lights are going to be terminated. What? Your home is going to be repossessed. What? We closed your bank account. What? That ruins your whole day. Now, the mail has been traveling for days, and it didn't bother you until you knew about it. When you know about it, your day changes. Fear operates the same way. You can turn the lights out. Nothing happens until the suggestions come. And something tells you the lights are out. You don't know what's in the closet. You don't know what's under the bed. You don't know what's at your front door. You don't know what that sound is. You don't know what this is. You get hurt, and all these ideas and suggestions enter into your mind. What is speaking to you? What always speaks to you like that? Because if it were your own mind, couldn't you undo it? Couldn't you undo it? Notice how in the Bible it says God did not give us the spirit of fear. He didn't give us the spirit of fear. He didn't give us the spirit of fear. But he gave us a sound mind. So to operate under that spirit of fear is also to operate within, to be insane, to be crazy, ludicrous, to listen to something that you should not listen to. And when you make a move by fear, well, then that's where you mess up, right? That's where you mess up. What is the opposite of fear? What cancels fear in every case? Have you ever heard anybody say that love cancels fear? But do you know how that works? Anybody know how that works? How does love cancel fear? Anybody know? How does love? How many of you have been afraid, but because you know how to get rid of it? Fear is not an issue. I'll tell you this. You ready? Say we're all soldiers. We go to the field. We're going to the field to fight. Al-Qaeda or somebody like that. So we get out there, and all of a sudden we find out that, we're outnumbered. Now, whether you know it or not, that will cause you some real fear. Until you look left or right. You're scared to death, right? You're scared. You're like, oh, I know I'm going to get shot. This is going to hurt. Some of you are trying to catch the raptor train out of fear because you don't want to face any pain, any sorrow, anything critical. Isn't that the truth? You want the rapture to come right now because you're scared to face anything that may come. True? That's a fear. Listen, that's motivated by fear, not truth, because if it were motivated by truth, you would be saying, Lord, what must I do? Let me complete my task with you. Not to escape, but let me complete my task with you. But that's not what people are saying. People are saying, Lord, get me out of this place. Why? Wouldn't you want to finish what the Lord had you here for? Why is everybody in a rush for the rapture to come? Because they want to escape. Because they're frightened. You only want to escape when you're frightened. You don't have to be frightened. And the Lord's going to get you when he decides to get you. Right? You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay regardless. The end result is already established. But back to my story. When you're out there, you're scared to death. People are firing at you. That's going to be a scary thing, right? Like that shooter that walked down in Maryland and began to randomly shoot people. People were frightened. They were frightened. These mass shootings, people were frightened. Until you do one thing. You amplify love within you. You operate how you're made to operate. On a battlefield, you're scared to death, right? Somebody's shooting at you. Until you look left and look right, and you say, you know what? I'm going to protect these guys today, whatever the cost. You cannot do that if you're selfish. But when you do that out of a pure love. You know that? So then your declaration is, out of your love for those to your left and to your right, you're saying, I'm going to protect them this day. I don't care what happens to me. Do you know what you end up doing? You end up doing remarkable things because you're no longer responding by way of fear, but you're operating in the spirit of love. That's the spirit of love. What about a child, right? You see a child fall into a cage where the zoo is. An infant. Nobody's jumping in there full of, we got gorillas all over the place. Or a wolf. That really happened. Well, there was one gentleman there, you know what he said? That baby deserves life. He went in there and got that child. The wolf didn't do a thing. You can't do that if you're afraid. It's not a movie. But you can do that by way of love. And when you do those things by way of love, something happens. Different things happen. I can explain it to you. All I can say to you is that your Father's always going to be involved in every true act of love you ever commit. We're not talking about, giving your wife a smooch. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the selfless love. When you take yourself out of the equation and you truly commit yourself to being used for somebody else's deliverance, that is love. When you sacrifice everything for the one to your left and to your right, and you will not, nor you do not complain about your own life, but at that moment you're content with what you have to do, and you're going to do it out of love for them. You start doing everything out of them. Fear cannot settle into a person like that. Never work. When you commit yourself to others by way of love, your Father is always going to be involved. You know how some of you say, I just can't get my life right. That's the entire problem. Start living for, never do anything just to do it. Have a cause behind everything you do. Listen, and let that cause be founded in biblical principles. Always. Always. When you do that, things change. Things are altered. The impossible takes place. Right? In COT, this site, Angela, myself, this chat room, this conversation, some of the statistics out there, that's impossible. And then something else is about to happen with COT. That's impossible. It's impossible. There's no way it can happen. No way. COT does not advertise. And how many of you found it almost impossible to find your way here? How many? And then you heard this crazy guy speaking, right? In riddles and cryptic things. Yet, for some reason, you're changing. For some reason, you're reading. One of the major pieces of feedback we get back is that people have a newfound relationship with Christ. Do you know that? They do. They're reading more, right? They're not They're not afraid anymore. That's one of the most astounding things people write back, is they'll say, you know what, when I first came there, I was frightened, afraid. And then they stay here for a while, and they say, well, I'm not afraid anymore. Even they don't understand it. They say they're not afraid. They're just not afraid anymore. They see stuff happening in the world, they have no fear. They're not afraid. Oh, that's not me. Can't be. I didn't coordinate any of this. I didn't. It just happened. Like the recordings. You guys have recordings not because of me. Isn't that funny? I don't even know about... Listen, here's what's so funny. The recordings, people would always tell me, why don't you title this? Nope, I don't mess with titles of the recordings. I do not dictate the titles or anything else. I told you I'm a believer in the spiritual things of the Most High. I believe in people working from their hearts. Everything is voluntary. Nothing is obligated. If a person wanted to give up and stop right now, then so be it. Nothing can ever be forced. I will never operate by some spirit of force, some manipulative thing to get people to see things this way or that way. No. The Lord is coordinating everything at a very high level. It is an amazing thing to watch. It's also impossible. It shouldn't be working, but it is. It really is. It's an amazing thing. But that's what happens when you commit yourselves to the one to your left and to your right out of love. Now, I'm going to ask you something, because some of you think you have this mediocre life. Who thinks they have a mediocre life? Because I'll beg to differ right away. You have determined what your life is. Time for you to let God to show you what your life truly is. Time for you to let God show you. This conversation, by the way, do you know what this is? Do you know what this is? This is to get you to see something about your own life as you go forward with this counter zero. To see what, though? To understand about your own contentment. God said this, you'll never stay. He said in so many different terms, you'll never stay where you are. Do you know that? You'll always go forward with the Lord. Do you know that? You never, how many find, if you find your life stagnant, you got to think about something. Isn't it because you've been trying to move your life forward? Now, you have two avenues. The world, those people who have worldly mindsets, they move their life forward. They take full control of their lives. Here's the problem. Here's the way Satan works. Satan will allow that process to happen with you before he totally interrupts it. He'll wait until you get a lot of vanity inside of yourself, pride, ego, and everything else moving your life forward. And then right when you have a breakthrough, when you're about to commit it to the Most High, he'll break it down before you can ever do that, because you built your life up in the world. Many of you have tried to build your life up in the world. What do you think would happen if you built your life up in Christ? Nothing would have power to tear it down. Nothing. And it's not to make you a fortress unto yourselves. That's not the point. The point is, sometimes we suffer things due to our own discontentment, this psychological condition of the world. And people suffer things because they're not content with what the Lord has provided them. If he supplies all of your needs according to his riches and glory, you have what you have because of him. And if you start being, if you're not content with what he has supplied you, then aren't you telling him, God, this is not enough? Isn't that what you're communicating every single day of your life, that you're not content? Think about it. Look at the underlying conversation you're having. Aren't you saying, God, this is not enough? So what would happen if you said, Lord, thank you for what you've given me this day? What do you think would happen? And you truly begin to walk and live in that and truly take care of that. How do I know that some people don't take care of things? Because listen, when's the last time, if you have clothing in your house that you have not touched in 6 months, what are you doing? In the Bible, it says, know the condition of your flock. That's what it says. That means be a good steward over what you have. If you have forgotten what you have, you're in the world of excess. God works by necessity, not excess. God's provisions are for a cause, not for clout. Right? If you had a real need that required a couple of $1,000,000, God said he would supply your needs according to his riches and glory. That's for those who live their lives in accordance with the Lord. That's your intent. It means you're going to mess up, yeah. But when you have committed yourself to live your life to the Lord's standards, everything he said he would do, he's going to do. That goes for your body, right? You guys remember I was on air. You know, I was actually on air when I had a collapsed lung when that happened. And I did finish the broadcast. You guys remember that? One day, my breathing was perfect. You guys remember that? The next day, it was labored. And somebody asked about it. Somebody did. And I said, I don't worry about it. You remember that? You guys remember that? It was like I couldn't breathe. That's a bad thing to have happen. And I was on air and I still finished the broadcast. And then it was really labored, like for 2 weeks. I mean, it was bad for 2 weeks. Now, anybody with a collapsed lung, right? If you had a collapsed lung, you know how that can be shocking. It's not supposed to come back real fast. How does it come back? But here's somebody saying, well, what's your secret, Mike? How do you keep doing this, right? I have a doctor that asked me that question. Here it is. You ready? Despite what happens to me, I desire to help people. Right? My life, my death is in the Lord's hands. It's not in anybody else's hands. And whatever he decides, I'm fine with. But as he gives me this day, day 0, right? I'm going to do whatever I can in this day. I will not pause for something like the body or something else. Not. You know, the Lord said when you're in the gospel, and he was talking about if you don't hate mother, brother, sister, and all these other people, you're not fit for the kingdom of God. You're not fit to carry the gospel either, right? You're supposed to take up your cross. You bear that daily. Whatever issue of life you have going on, you bear that daily. When you have the gospel and you have a desire to help people, nothing should stop you. Nothing should deter you from doing the Lord's work. And so, of course, trials will come in that. That's what trials are for. When you commit yourself to something, a trial is designed to try your faith in what you just committed to. And if you be found worthy, you'll continue. If not, you'll simply give up, but not to your hurt. It means that if we make a commitment we cannot keep, and the Lord allows a trial to form, and with all of what we are, we cannot keep it. The Lord has things that will collapse in our hands that we should have never held in the first place. Right? But if you dedicate yourself to something like the gospel, if you're going to have trials, you know what the Lord said, though? That he would bring us through, and so I trust that. So I often tell the Lord I don't have time for this sickness. Lord, you know I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to try it anyway. There's no voice telling me, but just, don't do it. I don't allow that voice to come near me. Right? To look after Mike first. No, that's not what I'm here for. So when I continue to press, guess what happens? My body aligns to my intent for the Lord only. It will not align to my intent for the world, but for the Lord, yes. Especially when it's concerned with helping other people. Folks, I'm telling you something. If you want a life change, commit yourselves out of love for others. If you're a dad, do it for your household. Don't ever be a selfish dad, but live your life for your children. As parents, right? All of us are parents. There's only one way I can see life. I've lived my life. I have. And I know what this world is. So guess what? A big portion of my life is committed to children. That's why I had a childhood. That's why I can remember things in my childhood. I can remember certain things that just had no good outcome. Right? You guys do too. You can't stop everything like that with children, but what you can do is you can reinforce those known qualities of righteousness that you have learned over years and encourage that in a child. The world's not going to do it. The world fights to own your children. What are you doing? Do you complain, or are you doing something about it? And what I mean is, you know how people say, well, my child goes to school and they're just teaching children everything. Well, what are you teaching them? You teach them how to walk in the world, but carry the light. You teach them how to face everything and never run away. You teach them to continue, not to give up. You teach them what that struggle of righteousness is about. You don't have them walking for a reward, but to walk for commitment of love, right? For that commitment. See, some people walk because they think they're going to get something out of it. If I do this, the Lord's going to do this. I don't walk that way. I don't do anything that way. I'll never do anything for the Lord to get something out of the Lord. What he did for me, he did at the cross. And when you teach that to a child, Satan cannot steal that. See, when you're walking, right, or in a work, so you can get your healing, or so somebody else can get their healing, or something like that, that can often be interrupted. And when it's interrupted, guess what happens to you? You get discouraged, don't you? But if you're serving the Lord because he gave his life on the cross, how can Satan mess that up? He cannot. He just messed up. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Satan would fight that message in your minds right now. He's going to countermand this because he can't do anything about it. That means he can strip you clean like Job, and you will still serve the Lord. He can't deal with that. He has to have leverage over you. Why do you think he assigns certain people to your life? You know how you thought that other person was a Christian, but they're really not a Christian? They believe in God in some weird way, and they don't want you to do what the Lord put on your heart. And because you've succeeded your authority to theirs, now you're stuck. Anybody ever get one of those things, one of those predicaments? As you grow, you see these things. You do. You see them, and you don't fall for their tricks. Right? A lot of people want to serve the Lord because they don't want the goodness in their life to be messed up. So what happens to a Christian who really believes? This is, you know what, Lord, thank you for everything. But they're not thinking about acquiring a thing. They're just serving the Lord. What can Satan do? He'll try everything. He'll succeed at nothing. At nothing. He will not slow you down. He won't. See, some of you are tired, aren't you? You're tired. You're really tired. You may not tell anybody, but you're tired. You're tired because your way was not established. I can't get tired, right? Because every day God gives me is the day I'm given, and I decree myself to do a certain thing. I just start doing it. And that's what I'm going to do, no matter what works and what does not. I keep going. Like something that won't flush. That's what I am to the enemy. I'm something that will not flush. Yes, I said it. That's what I am to the enemy. He tries and he tries. But let your way be of commitment. And let that commitment be bound in love. And do everything with a purpose in it. And hopefully that purpose is not a selfish one. If you can align with this, everything changes in your life. Can you tell I really want your lives to have a breakthrough? Listen, breakthroughs, that word breakthrough has been used so many times. But I live my way of breakthroughs, or else I would be dead. I would be dead as 4 o'clock. You guys know how dead 4 o'clock is? 4 o'clock's a dead time of the day. 4 o'clock is, right? So that's what I would be. But I'm not. I know certain things are absolutely real. But what good is it, right, to find a treasure and you can't share that treasure with anybody else? What are you going to do, throw a party your own self? No. Wouldn't the point be to have people experience the goodness of the Most High? Not the ways they think either. You're looking at something daily the Lord will do. Daily the Lord will do this in your life. He'll do things in your life. All you have to do is look up. Don't become that selfish person by way of emotions, angry and all these things, right? So you start doing things for yourself. Well, I got to protect myself first. No, because didn't the Lord say, you're bought with a price? Why would he purchase you with the cost of his life and abandon you? Nobody will ever pay a price for you that Christ paid for you. Actually, God paid it for you through Christ. Nobody will ever pay that price for you. But the Lord already did. Why? Because although you may not believe in the things of the Lord all the time, he does believe in you all the time. Now, isn't that a twister? So that means God has faith in you. Boy, that's different. Isn't that different? Your Father in heaven, your true Father, has faith in you. He believes in you. He believes in you. If he did not believe in you, how could you believe in him? How could you believe in Christ? How could you have faith in him? All those things are to keep you going in him. He has faith in you. He already knew what you had to go through to bring your character out, to bring certain things out of you. He already knew this. He believes in you. That's why you have life. The day he gives up on you, you can't be here and you're not going to believe in him. So because you believe in him, guess what? He's not giving up on you. And he believes in you, or you wouldn't be here. Let's go ahead and face it. Honestly, look at what we have done in our lives. Look at the blasphemous things, in all honesty, that we have done unto the Most High. How many times did we pray and with the same tongue curse somebody else hours later? But he never turned his back. Because we still believe in him. See, the Bible tells us, right, that if he gives you over to a reprobate mind, you no longer believe that Jesus is Lord. He gives you over to the iniquitous thoughts and things of this world, which means you could by no means tolerate not a word I'm saying. He believes in you. He is the one keeping the faith in you. That measure of faith he gives you, that's a measure of faith he'll always know in you. He's the reason you still have it. It's impossible to believe in the living God or the Lord Jesus unless God gave you, put that belief in you. And if you put that belief in you, it is so that you can be kept and brought all the way to the finish line. He already knows we don't comprehend and understand everything. He already knows that we're inclined to go astray. He already knows these things. And he believes in you. He believes in you. No wonder in the Old Testament it says it grieved God that he made man. No wonder it says that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever, right, believeth upon his name, that believeth in him shall have everlasting life. You'll have everlasting life to believe upon his name, of course, because God puts that belief in you. It's impossible for you to have that belief without God loving you and believing in you. So if he loves and believes in you, and he will finish the work he began in you, and he's the author and finisher of your faith, then the process you've been enduring is an ending. It has an ending. That means everything you've gone through is temporary. You know, it's kind of like getting hurt, and you wake up the next day and there's no evidence that you were ever hurt. You can hardly remember being hurt. Anybody ever bump their knuckle on something and it hurts just for a second? And you don't even think about it ever again. Right? That's how your life is going to be. You're going to snap to yourself one day. You're going to be in your eternal form. Life will leave not one scar. You'll know all truth, embraced with all love. This process will be finished. It will have served its purpose. And in that day you'll know. That day you'll know. Because God believes in you. All of what you see in the Bible, right, is for you. If it weren't designed the way it's designed, all of us would be lost. We would. Even with Christ, if our circumstances were different, we'd be lost. Case in point. No, I'm going to give you that case in point after the break. I'm going to give you a case in point after the break, a good example of something all of us do, but we're not really aware of until that time comes. But I'll give you that right after this break right here at the Council of Time. I'll be right back, everybody. Okay, I'm back. Let's see. I should give you guys a fact every day about your secret societies. Hey, do you guys want to know the one of the most the favorite song of Freemasonry? Huh? Anybody? He's got the whole world in his hands. I just want to tell you that. Anyway, now I better not say too much about that stuff. We'll leave that alone. We'll leave it alone. All right, guys, here it is. Let me give you this small piece of knowledge. I'm going to go into certain events and some things we're going to have to cover here in COT, which is going to require a lot of midnight hours of recordings. But this is your life. You ready? People don't like troubles in their homes, right? They don't like things going wrong. But I want you to think about this. Imagine a time when you felt numb inside, doing too many repetitious things, right? All of a sudden you get sick. Anybody ever do that? You get sick. You get somebody says, what? Michael, fire, is he coming cloaked in fire? Is who coming cloaked in fire? Christ? Are you talking about Christ? His coming? The Lord? Somebody said, is he coming in fire? There are lots of descriptions that say that, yes. Lots of descriptions that say that. I like some of the more complete descriptions. If you compile all the descriptions of Christ coming back, you'll see it very clearly. Right? You don't need to, no one needs to theorize or take a guess. And number two, listen, this is serious for me, right? When you are inquiring about questions about Christ, his return is authored by the Father, under the Father's control. The Father knows the answer, how he's going to send his Son, when he's going to send his Son. It's important that you inquire of the Lord about these things. That's very important. And then never forget you ask the question. There will be a follow-up. Most people have no confidence sometimes in prayer because they forget what they prayed about. When you pray something like that for an answer, write it down. Don't let your physical mind forget things like that. Write it down and look for the answer. Don't look in a specific avenue. Don't say, well, God's going to tell somebody and they're going to give it. Don't do that, right? Because I've known in a lot of cases the Lord will do things and we're not paying attention. We're just not paying attention. He'll give an answer. And in hindsight, you can look back and see he gave an answer. But if you want something timely, you have to be in a position where you're paying attention, which is why. Did you ever notice the prophets, when they would inquire of the Lord, they would fast first for the answer? When you fast, it's impossible to forget why you're fasting. And they would actually fast for an answer, right? They would fast. Well, when you do that, and your body starts to cut up on you and act up on you, you know why it's acting up? Because you're fasting, and you know what your fast is for. So you don't forget the question, right? Plus, you're foregoing everything for the sake of that answer, which means you're very sincere. A person who's not sincere is not going to complete the fast. They're going to come up with every excuse in the book. If you're serious, you'll commit to it. And by way of that commitment, God does answer. But why would he answer something for any of us when we know we're going to forget that we asked in the first place, right? Remember who you're approaching in prayer. Remember it's the one that created all things, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the one of all dominions, the one in control of everything, right? The one who knows the very count of the hair on your heads at any given time. Remember that. So don't go to the Lord haphazardly. Go to him in truth. Don't make up an accent, right? Don't do that. You know how some people, they go to the Lord and they try to sound proper? No, be yourself. Don't become like, some people do that to be heard, to be seen in a certain light. Be sincere. When I go to the Lord, I'm talking to him just like I'm talking to you. I do not use the these and the thous, right? I don't have an accent when I do that. I just go to the Lord because I want an answer. You don't go to a doctor with an accent. Oh, doctor, I broke my leg. Can you fix it, please? You don't do that, right? You go to the doctor, screaming and hollering. Oh, you got to fix this. That's all you say, right? So remember who you're approaching. Do it with all respect. Some of you have relationships with the Most High, but you haven't made that relationship real because you treat it like maybe it's not real, right? If you go to your job, you will approach the owner of that job with respect because you want the job, right? We treat people with respect we need something from, or that we think may have authority over us, or who we think may impact our lives. We get starstruck by people here on earth, but we won't approach the Father with that awe and respect that we would a person on earth. Now, how would the Father perceive that? Right? In other words, do it for real, but remember who he is. He is your real Father, an actual Father. And if you have a father on earth, some of you didn't, that's a good dad. You know, an old person, that's a good friend. You know, a teacher, that's an old, good teacher. The Father is 1,000,000,000 times greater than that. That means more love, right? More absoluteness, more caring, more everything. That's our Father. That's our Father. Okay, I don't know why that just happened. All my screens went blank. Let's see if they'll come back. Yes, they came back. That was weird. All my screens went blank. Anyway, do that with awe and respect for the Most High. And remember what you asked. You'll receive an answer. You will. Now, do you guys know at a point in your life when you get bored, something like that, your life feels numb, feels like you're not going anywhere, and then all of a sudden something happens, like you get the flu. Anybody ever have the flu, right? Nobody likes the flu. When you get the flu and you get an upper respiratory flu where it's hard to breathe, I mean, it really hurts, and you're just all messed up, right? And you're like that for about maybe 3-4 days. It's pretty rough, isn't it? All of a sudden, when you have that flu, you start to realize, wow, I am stuck. I can't do anything. You're weak, right? You can't do too much. You guys know what I'm talking about. But when you begin to recover, have you ever noticed how happy you are when you're recovering? Your life has not changed at all. You didn't get a promotion. You didn't get a raise. You didn't hit the lottery. You're just not sick anymore. Do you know that? Do you know what happens when you get happier, that the flu is leaving? You're like, oh, I feel so much better. You guys know that feeling, right? The rate of your happiness is always going to be based on the depth of that sickness. But why? Because when you start to recover, right, you begin to embrace what you took for granted prior to your sickness. You begin to embrace the fact that you can finally eat again. You begin to embrace the fact that you can breathe again, right? So happiness, joy returns by what? Where is this joy coming from? The joy is coming from the simple fact that you can live again. So you have a higher appreciation of life, but only when life is somewhat threatened. It takes a situation to get us to appreciate things, doesn't it? It takes a situation. If God did not give us, if he didn't permit nor allow these situations to come into our lives, none of us would know what joy is. None of us would. We would get to the point where we would hate everything. And if you notice, even by knowing this, now I know this, right? I know this. You can know this. But have you ever noticed that numbness comes back? That emptiness will come back. If you're not careful, it comes back. And then all of a sudden, something else breaks down in your life. And it gets bad. And then when it goes away, you're happy again. You're like, thank you, Lord. This didn't, consume me. You're appreciative of life again. And have you noticed how many times this happens to a person who falls back into depression again and again and again? Until you get to the point where you remember all the whole collection of these bad moments. You begin to remember these things that happened. And then you begin to recount how you were delivered out of these things. At that point, it does not require a sickness to get you to embrace what the Lord is giving you this day. And joy returns. Listen, joy returns by experience. Do you hear me? Joy returns by experience. When we were young, we thought that was joy. That was inquisitiveness. The world was a playground, a mystery, right? The more you learn, the more boring the world gets because you see how things operate. That's just like there are certain subjects we discuss here at COT. It may be fascinating to you, but when you've been there, when you have interacted in certain ways and you've done that, it becomes a common thing. It holds no spark anymore, right? And if you're not careful, if the Lord were to hold back your life from going down the tubes every so often, you would never know what joy is. And your life would be a living hell. Do you know that? Because some of you know that when you don't go through things prior to you going through some of these heavy things, right? Your life became, dead. How many of you said to yourselves, why am I alive? How many of you did like Job did? I did. I did like Job. Like, Lord, why am I even here? Why am I here? And it was quite selfish because when I said that, right, it was because my fulfillment was not there yet. Little did I know the Lord was just getting started. And then things start happening. And listen, if it's one of those long durational things, if the Lord gave you a 1-year period of one of these trials or a 2-year period, you would not ever not embrace the day given you. Sometimes you can't embrace the day. It's that bad. But I'll tell you something. It is highly purposed. Now, imagine this. Imagine your sons, your daughters, your friends. If you had the power and you had the authority and the task to get your friends, to get your family to this appreciative point where they could see life, what life is, and to be thankful for life. And if you had to have that situation come on them, could you do it? Or would it hurt every time you did it? You know what it says in the Bible if you read that carefully? Do you not know the heaviness upon the Father when you go into a situation? This is what we forget. When you get sick, the Lord has full knowledge. He knows exactly how you feel. When you get sick, he's in your sickness. When you're in the storm, he's in the storm with you. He partakes of it with you. We often may not partake of him, but he partakes of us. Why? Because he's truthful and he's thorough. So he partakes of us, knowing every aspect of our situation. It also means he knows our pain levels. He knows what we can take and what we cannot take. See, that small scripture when it says the Lord will never place anything upon you beyond that which you can bear. That means he understands how much you can bear. He knows how much weight you can carry. He knows exactly how you feel. And the only way that can happen is to be a partaker of your sickness. So when you're sick, broken, and depressed, that experience is his knowledge. What good father could know if your child got sick, right? And you were like God, and when your child got sick, you had all the symptoms and you could feel the sickness, but you still had to operate. How could you endure that of your child? If a child gets sick and you experience what they do, sympathy would fall out of you. wouldn't it? It would fall like rain in a hurricane or something, right? Most of us would not be able to endure it. And if we had the power, we would remove that sickness immediately. The problem is the child's, the level of their mind to comprehend certain things, the growth of their spirit will not be there. They have to have the understanding. The only way to have that understanding is by way of truth, to live through something. That means the Father suffers our situation. What we go through, we're not alone. He's a partaker of it. He knows all about it. That means with a heaviness, he's raising you. God raises us by way of life. Life is God's way of raising us. He could have had us all born adults with all knowledge and discipline, but that's not how he did it. He had us grow up in our freedom to experience every evil under the sun and all goodness that he could give us. And he went through that with us, is carefully managed. Who could know of the depth of a child's sickness, including feeling the pain, and endure the situation with the child without intervening to relieve the pain? Who could see their child go through torment after torment and go through it with them? What heaviness would that be on you? But see, sometimes when we go through problems and we say God's not around, we don't realize it's impossible that he's absent. He's with us. He knows the depth of your pain, and it's a heaviness upon him to sing you through that, to raise you up. The heaviness was upon him for his son's sake also. But he did not suffer his son to be relieved of that task of the cross. And he did that for us. And in your sickness, he understands what it's working in you. He understands what it's working. If there were another way, it would be another way. When we go through these problems and situations, we see life differently. We don't take for granted what the Lord has provided. In fact, through our sufferings, we learn what the Lord has given us. Through our sufferings, we then understand that our sight and our hearing and our taste and everything else is truly of the goodness of the Lord. We would not know that goodness if we did not lose these things from time to time. We would become numb and bored, wouldn't we? We all know it. Take your sicknesses, for example. Before you were sick, we were full of complaints. And then we get sick where it's really bad. And when we start feeling good again, joy returns, doesn't it? With the recovery, joy comes. Joy comes because we realize we took it for granted. All of you guys who had to go through special training, you took home for granted. When you go through that special training, that's when you realize it. Only when hardship comes do you realize what you were taking for granted. But what I'm telling you is that that's the process we go through. But never think you're going through it all by yourselves. The Lord understands your situation intimately. To understand it, he must feel just like you feel. My. He knows your breaking point. He knows it. See, sometimes we think God is another human being. Wrong. It's impossible that he does not know every aspect of you, every condition of every cell in you. So even what you cannot perceive, he perceives. He knows exactly what he's doing in your life. Don't ever think it's some easy task to raise you. For us, it would be a daily, heartbreaking experience. So much of a heartbreak, there's no way not one human being could ever do what God does in the average day. None of us could do that. None of us could. I could not see a child suffer and know that child is suffering to the extent it would suffer and stand by and allow it to happen day after day. I couldn't do that. I could not do that. But the Lord knows it's necessary. And with a heaviness, he's raising us. I found a scripture one day that kind of goes like this. With heavy hearts, laden with joy, they await. And it was talking about you, that those in the heavens await you with a heavy heart, laden with joy. To see you go through this process is heaviness. Our Father's good, not evil. Evil men, they don't care about what you go through. Good men are always concerned. And is the Father not better than a good man here on earth? Yes, he is. This is a heaviness for your deliverance. Did Jesus cry out? Yes, he did. Was he in pain? Yes, he was. For you, a heaviness every day, every moment is a heaviness. And you multiply that by everybody on earth. Who could go through that? Why do you think the Lord, he knows about us through and through, but he's concerned about our salvation, not our damnation. He desires us to be fully delivered, and he's committed to delivering all of us. And so with great heaviness, this process continues. Do you also know that for all of you, it is soon to be over? It does not matter who comes after you. Your process will soon be over. How often do we consider these things? We really don't, do we? Not all the time. Because when you do, it stirs a truth in you. It stirs your spirit. It makes you want to walk forward in the Lord without receiving anything, knowing that he has given everything just for us. That's our Father. That's our Lord. So understand that about this process, your specific process. Understand that everything you go through as part of this process is critical and important. Never think you're by yourselves. Never think you're going through something alone. Because the Lord knows every aspect of you. Somebody says, question, go ahead. What is that question? Somebody had a question? Go ahead with it. Well, I can see part of it. You guys do understand that, let me give you guys something while we're waiting on this question. I don't know what happened to Bear Bears. Where's she at? Anyway, in COT, you know how people talk. I'm going to use the flat earth for an example. There are lots of theories about the flat earth, right? Lots of theories. I'm not really concerned about it for good reason, but there are lots of theories. There are tons of theories out there about the flat earth. And this brings up this UFO topic. All of it stems behind the UFO topic. In fact, there was a paper released that said that if they were to ever say that UFOs were real, all sorts of subjects that were theory would be brought to the forefront in people's minds. And at that point, a type of insanity would ensue in the world because everybody would have their own theory as to what they believe is happening. Well, I got to tell you this, that you're going to hear a lot of people talking against the Bible and things like that, but there are people with operational knowledge of this UFO topic and things like that, right? And it's the operational knowledge that will really give you, it will allow you a gleaning into what's happening in your life at a greater scale, right? Now, listen to me carefully. God has a way of allowing you to know things as you can handle them. He does, as you're ready to accept them. God will never give you something that you will just outright reject. He knows exactly where you are, not your geolocation, not that way, but he knows where you are as far as your faith, as far as your belief and what you believe in, what you're working out, what you're stuck on. He knows exactly where you are. We're reaching a time of the maturity of, well, let's say science, where people can share instantly across the globe. This is bringing about a lot of changes in the world. And it's also people inadvertently are calling things to themselves, right? They're making doors open. They're making things happen. Many things will be revealed, and the earth will continue to change. In the Bible, it says that the earth is cursed because of man's sins. The earth is cursed because of man's sins, right? And so because the earth is under a curse, it's going through a degradation, or let's just say a regurgitation period. And you're going to learn a lot of strange things, right? Things that we've not discussed here. I discuss things in common terms so people understand what I'm talking about. Because if I were to speak in the truthful terms, for example, do you know that no one has, well, no, I'm not going to go there. Let's put it this way. The core of the earth. Is that theory or truth? But the earth is molten. Is that theory or truth? It's theory, right? It's theory. But a dynamo, rotating, causing a magnetic field, this, that, and the other, that's what people understand. But you guys also understand that if you get a magnet around anything hot, what happens? No more magnet. The magnet won't work. It's dead. Did you know that? If you put high heat to a magnet, it's no longer a magnet. Heat kills magnetism. Do you guys know that? Well, if that is the case, how is the sun magnetic? How is the sun magnetic? How does it have a magnetic pull? Because magnetism is one of those secrets, right? One of those scientific things nobody really wants to touch base on. But there's an extensive library on magnetism, and it's not what you think. In fact, it's just like you, but you turn yours off. Let's put it that way, right? You turn yours off. There's an attraction to large bodies, an attraction. If you get two big things together, they're going to be attracted because of how they're made. It's a type law. It works regardless of where you are, right? Regardless. And it has little to do with magnetism. It has a lot to do with particle physics, but little to do with magnetism, right? Scientists they try to explain how these forces operate. That's what they do. But these forces are kept the consistent forces we know about because of our Father. And do you know that in the days we live in, those forces are going to, those who hold the forces, this is going to sound cryptic, but those who hold the forces will abandon their posts. That's happening already, right? You know how pi is 3.14, so on, so on, so on, so on. Imagine if we woke up one day and pi was 7.2498, whatever. Wouldn't that be weird? Wouldn't that be, if all of a sudden, all the formulas that you utilized with pi, if they no longer worked, and you had to use a different constant. A constant is a number that does not change. A constant is one of those factored numbers that you use in mathematics because its representation never changes. So you can trust that, if you multiply this by this, you're going to have this outcome. Measure this ratio, this, that, and the other. Well, some of the constants are changing. Some of the forces, the substructure, the pattern that makes things what they are is altering. That means physics is starting to break down for some reason. That's not good, right? But it was already foretold that this would happen. That actual constants are changing, like the speed of light. You know the speed of light by what people told you. You know the heavens by what people told you. You know the bottom of the ocean by what people told you. But what is actually there? What's actually there? We can learn a lesson by the simplicity of our Father. People make things complicated. They always like things complicated, right? Structured and organized for the sake of control. Because if they can control what's under there, they can sleep at night. Some people are driven crazy because they can't control something. They are, right? But I can tell you this from experience, that the heavens, the earth, and the oceans are not quite like what everybody thinks they are, but it's exactly what God said it is. Like life on this planet is far more extensive than we could ever conceive. That's a fact. And we're going to start seeing some of these things, not all elements, but some elements. See, there are certain things that will exist that man will never, ever see. Not while they're in this form, right? They'll only see it in the other form. There are certain things that are protected that no matter what man does, he'll never be able to interfere with. Those things that are coming, those things that will manifest, are working right now. You know in the Bible when it says the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let till it be taken out of the way, then will that wicked be revealed. That, right? You know that scripture, right? Well, the mystery of iniquity, mystery means hidden. Hidden iniquity, the hidden portions of iniquity, the parts you cannot see, are at work. They are soon to be revealed. What's behind evil is soon to be revealed. And when it's revealed, a kingdom will ensue. The big embrace, they call it, will happen. The big embrace. This big embrace requires a change of everything that we know. And have you noticed that it began in politics? This war, this governmental war in all governments, from Israel to the USA to Europe. It's a war. To Russia, it's a war, the governmental war. You guys remember that at the beginning of the year about the governmental war? Well, that's what I called it, was a governmental war. Governments would be at war. You see that now happening, right? The change in leadership always follows the governmental war. It happens right in the middle of this governmental war, and a new type of rule is going to happen. A very different rule type. You'll begin to see things that nobody will agree with you on. Only those who believe in Christ are going to be given eyes to see what's actually happening. So don't ever try to convince someone of what you're seeing. Hold that close. You can share that with your brothers and your sisters because they will see the same thing, but you will not be able to talk outside of those who actually believe in Christ. They will not see what you're seeing. They will not see what you're saying. Somebody says, exactly what does it mean when it says God created the water separate from the water? You know, it's very easy. Now, let me give you my simple mind. You ready? You ready? I'm going to answer this real quick because that goes with, a lot of people think that the canopy of water that was in times of old is still up there, right? That's what they believe. That's where that idea comes from. There was an unbroken canopy around the earth. Now it's in cloud form. Isn't that something? Let me go back and read something to you guys. I like that question, by the way. I like that question. Not because I can answer it. It's because, these things come up from time to time. And it says this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. And darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. In the evening and the morning were the first day. Now, this first light and darkness, was that the sun's light and the moon's darkness? No, it was not. That was light and dark. That's used in the context of the Word of God. And this word day, if you notice, is not the day that we refer to as a good common day. It means something different. That word night means something different. This is light and darkness, good and evil, right? That's what that is. God made a separation between the two. Let me continue. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Well, what did he say first? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void. Well, wait a minute. It says he created the heavens and he created the earth, but the earth had no form. It was void. You know what void means? Empty. He created the heavens and the earth. Keep that in mind. He created the heavens and the earth. In what context? Earth. And guess what it says down here? And it says, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. What waters? In the chaos of the earth, God separated the elements. Let me continue to read. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. What's a firmament? Sky. So you have, look what you have. Do you not have waters below and above right now? What are waters above you called in the heavens? Clouds. What are waters below you called? The oceans and everything like that, right? And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. Do you know this word water implies, listen, this is going to mess you up. This word water does not imply the lakes and the oceans. This word water implies what makes up the oceans and the lakes. Uh-oh, see, there we go. Thank you, Lord. I love Hebrew. Anyway, that implies what makes up the oceans and the lakes. And what makes up the oceans and the lakes? H2O. So he divided the H2O below and above. And what do you have above your heads? H2O. Don't you? You have H2O above your heads. Do you not? Water vapor is above your heads in a different form as water vapor. It's above your heads. You have H2O below you, don't you? There's H2O in the earth, right? They were separated. So what is that firmament in between? It's the air we breathe. We're encapsulated. Isn't that something? Wait a minute, let's continue. And he did this, and God called the firmament heaven. Isn't that what we call this space right now that we believe heaven? Do you see heaven, first heaven, second heaven, third heaven, fourth heaven, fifth heaven? People have made it complicated. God didn't make it complicated. God gave us a generalized picture of everything. We just have a hard time accepting it. In the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear. So clearly, the waters below were what? The elements that make up the oceans and the lakes. God called the dry land earth, and gathered together the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass. See, at this point, you really don't hear about the heavens above until Noah. You have to read the story of Noah, too. Because to know about Noah, you'll know that God never made it rain on the earth. And when he didn't make it rain on the earth, right? When he didn't make it rain, that's where this dense water canopy came from that they find when they're digging up bones. When they're digging up bones, they know it was a water canopy because certain element contents were concentrated, captured in the bones, right? Your bones have marrow, which is a blood manufacturing center of animals and stuff, right? But did you know that you can actually count what the atmosphere was like by the inside of the marrow of a creature? Isn't that something? So you go into all these different complicated things, and then you begin to find out, wow, it was some dense stuff up there. As in dense stuff, like dense, real dense stuff in the clouds, which, by the way, is about to happen again. You're going to get a good example of what that is. You're going to see what a cloudburst is over a country, right? I was in a cloudburst one time when I was little. You cannot breathe in a cloudburst. It looks like somebody's dumping a bucket of water straight down on your heads. You cannot breathe. It's that much water. Now, you wouldn't think the atmosphere can hold that much water. The average cloud that goes over your head, right, is so heavy that if it were all to fall at one time, it would destroy all life underneath it. It would smash it flat That's exactly how you get fossils. Isn't that interesting? You get fossils. Oh, by the way, the language in Genesis, and after the flood of Noah altered, it was changed because the firmament was different after Noah than before Noah. Isn't that something? You see that in other books of the Bible. That was way different following Noah. See, they had never had a rainbow before. Why? Rainbows cannot form with obscured light. Do you know that? They can't. The spectrum was off. Why? Because of the atmosphere. It was a thickness to the atmosphere. It was hot, humid, like a jungle type thing going on all over the earth. But it never rained, just like some of these forests that they have in some of these jungles. In some of the jungles, you have spots where you don't see rainwater, but it is so thick and humid, you don't need it. Water droplets are all over the place. It does not rain. You don't need rain, but the atmosphere is so thick, you can't even see above the tree line. So imagine something like that. That'd be something. Huh? Somebody says, how does this affect radiocarbon dating? Disastrously. Why? Because water is a carrier of radiation. Radiocarbon dating is flawed because you have to know, see, that's radiocarbon dating would be okay if you assume that there was no nuclear event on the earth like impact from comets or things of that nature. We know that's just not consistent. If the sun did not send off flares, next flares, and things like that, everything would be consistent. We know that's not right. That's why on a woolly mammoth that they pull up and these bones they pull up, right? The head of the creature they pull out of the dirt, one species, but the head will be 30,000 years old, and the tail will be 30,000 years young, and the torso is going to be 300 million years in the future, and the rib bones will be, 250 million years in the past. So what they have done with radiocarbon dating is to do their best guess. Radiocarbon dating only works with things that decay. So you can't have radiocarbon dating without something living in there. Bone turns into rock. And if it's been smashed hard enough and really squeezed, there's no marrow left. There's no material to do radiocarbon dating, right? And by the way, a vitrification event took place all over the earth, and there's iridium layer all over the earth, and this, that, and the other. So we know we had radioactive events here on the earth. So they make up stuff. It's the best guess. They follow the theory of evolution. Would you be surprised to know that most of the dinosaurs may be 5,000, 6,000 years old? Would that mess you up? They have another way of dating that's highly accurate. Nothing has dated. Nothing has dated. Nothing has been dated over a certain amount of time. I'm not going to tell you what that time is because people start to argue, but nothing has been dated older. Well, let's say the dates that they're giving you, that they speak about that I grew up with, it's phony baloney. It's phony baloney. It's not true. Oh, by the way, when Mount St. Helens, you know how there were no fossils, right? No fossils in the earth of common day deer, kangaroos, stuff like that, right? When Mount St. Helens blew, fossils were formed in less than 5 years. You know why? Because it blew up material and water. It ejected that. And when it ejected that, all of that stuff fell. And when it fell, it smashed animals by way of water into the dirt, which fossilized under these new formed lakes, and fossils formed in 5 years. Full fossils in 5 years. 5 years. 5 years. 5 years. Isn't that amazing? They don't want to share that, do they? They don't want to share that. They don't want to share that because they have to support Darwin's theory of evolution. It's probably them following Albert Pike's advice, his advice, people like that, their advice. Somebody says, why do we go to school? Because everybody is to be indoctrinated into the world system. The world is a system. It's a system that everybody is indoctrinated in. And in the Bible it says, you are in this world. You are not of this world. It also says, come out of her, my people, and be not partakers of her sins, that you won't partake of her plagues. Anybody who is a part of this world system, when the plagues begin, and they have, You will endure the plagues of this earth. It's just like during the 60s, diseases went around, and all those who partook of some of that free lifestyle living, they partook in those diseases. More diseases are on the way. And anybody who partakes in these things of the world are going to partake of those diseases. Animals are changing, becoming quite aggressive to humanity. Animals that shouldn't be. People are designing brand new animals. People have lost their minds. Right? You wouldn't believe this, but there are cartoon characters that have been genetically assembled out of different species. And the same thing happens. They can make your favorite cartoon, they can make that animal. Do you guys know that? They can assemble that animal genetically and have it reproduce. The problem is these things are highly aggressive and territorial every single time. It's almost like they get a spirit straight from hell itself, and they start doing weird stuff. I can't get into that. Somebody says like SpongeBob. Sure, like SpongeBob, specifically those Pokemon characters, some of those in real life. They have resurrected just about anything you can imagine. They have tried it, proven, tested. They know they can do it. And some things escaped and some didn't. All of these ancient godlike looking things, they've been recreated already. They've been recreated. Some of them, well, as of 2023, have reached over the age of 1 year old. And that means you're probably not going to destroy them. Some of them grow at a phenomenal rate. And if you know anything about animals, right, it's not that you have to feed it. It's still going to grow up and be big and strong. I hope you know that. The body is strained. Science will have you think that in order to gain weight, muscle mass, you have to eat a lot of food. Wrong. Wrong. You release a certain hormone in the body. It replicates calories. That means an animal that's getting maybe 50 calories per day can grow to be over 2,000 pounds. That's impossible, right? Hormones can do that. Hormones can cause your body to extract all energies from the sun if necessary. There's so many ways the body can process its environment. It's just incredible. But these things are unlocked by hormones. Your hormones are controlled by your intent. Your intent, right, which is actually your faith, makes all things possible. Sound familiar? If you actually believe in something, things are going to start happening. But it's not limited to your own body. You can influence other people and other things around you. All you have to do is begin to live your life as though something is, and it will be. That's the truth. That works, good or evil. It's going to happen just that way. That's why some of you guys, you get upset and angry, and your electronics go haywire. Your car goes haywire. Stuff in your house goes haywire, right? Your situation can go wrong because of what's inside you. You're walking around with authority and you don't even know it. Okay, wait a minute. Mare Bears had something, and I totally miss Mare Bears. I can see her again. Mare, did you have one? Anybody? Who had one? Mare had one. I was looking for that one. I did not see it. I didn't see it. Somebody give me Mare's question. Somebody said, my life is like I'm in shape and I'll lose weight. Start walking like that. Listen, if you want to lose weight, then live your life like you lost weight. Start living your life like you lost weight. Don't live your life like you haven't lost weight, right? Live your life like you're skinny again. Skinny people don't go around eating up the whole restaurant, stuff like that. Skinny people are active. Skinny people are always hopping and jumping around doing stuff, right? I'm telling you, it'll happen. Plus, your metabolism will start to raise. Your body will accommodate your intent. Because your intent, which is your faith, is going to start doing things by way of your hormonal levels and everything else. Even your attitude, ladies. You can make your body release estrogen. You know what happens when a female does not have estrogen? They have no control. That's when you know how strong the body is, ladies. When you have no more estrogen, you're going to get mad at the world. You're going to be a raving lunatic. That's when you find out how strong the flesh is. So never brag that somehow you've overcome the flesh, but always thank God that you're able to resist things. You may not know this, but a lot of female males that have murdered people have been found with depleted estrogen levels. Isn't that something? People underestimate the strength of flesh. But your spirit is far stronger, but only if you learn to walk by the spirit, not the flesh. That's why it's not good to give an inch to anything concerning desires. If you give in a small amount to a desire, you're going to lose the battle. You will lose the battle. Right? I still don't see Mayor Bears. Where in the world did Mayor go off to? Mayor asked, is hell eternal? I can't answer that. We need precepts for that. I cannot answer that. That requires a lot of precepts. A lot of precepts. That's what it requires. See, because if I say no, people are going to say, what? And if I say yes, people are going to say, what? Surely there's got to be a way. But I'll tell you this, anybody who goes to hell, in their heart they were against Christ. No one's going to accidentally go there. You have to be a specific person, be separated from the living God. Do you hear what I'm telling you? No one who goes to hell is going to be some innocent bystander that made the wrong choice. No. And let me tell you something else. People shouldn't deceive themselves into thinking they know who everybody in their family is. God knows everybody in your family. You will discover who is who. Remember, the Lord will say, depart from me, you worker of iniquity, I never knew you. And if God never knew, if Jesus never knew someone, then they're a demon in the flesh. Period. They're a demonic entity in the flesh. No innocent person is going to go to the pit. And let me tell you something about it. I can't even talk about that. I was going to talk something about suicides, which is why I caution people. Don't ever say who was holy and who was not. Don't ever say that. God knows. Let that be enough. Let that be enough. Somebody says, Mike, is there a great UFO feeling in September? Unfortunately, what's happening with this stuff with the UFOs is already happening now. It'll be reported more and more. It's out of control right now as we speak. And when I say out of control, I mean out of control. It's out of control. But it's just like they want it. Don't think they're working alone, right? Don't think they just came here all of a sudden, some species came here to this planet. No, don't believe that. Don't believe that. They're going to do what the Lord gives them room to do. Just like you, if you open your front door and you get a house full of pets, are your pets going to run outside? Especially if they've not been outside. Aren't they going to go outside? Yes, they will. Why? Because they're animals. The animals are going to go outside. You got them all locked up in the house. They may have occupied for years, right? You open that front door and leave it open and watch what happens. They're going to run right out to the yard. Well, guess what? You start to open up doors to a lot of entities who have been held back from a specific location. You open up the doors. What are they going to do? They're going to rush in. How are they going to rush in? In every form they can that will deceive humanity. They can take many different shapes and forms. Many are locked in to a certain type of flesh form, right? Many are not. The only way you can be deceived is if you actually believe in them. If you're looking for something in them, that's when they have you. You want them to answer a question? That's when they have you. That's when they have you. Somebody says, Mike, have you ever had an NDE, near-death experience? Yeah, I have. When I was born. Of course, I was born dead. I was dead when I was born. Funeral arrangements made out and everything else. Everybody gave up on me, and it was one person that refused. Against all policy and everything else, they refused. And so they did some checking, rechecks and checks and rechecks and kind of went against procedure. And sure enough, I somehow popped back. Then there was a prophecy over me. There was actual prophecy over me, and I popped back. Now, I was never one to believe in a prophecy over me. I'm telling you that right now. Still to this very day, right? It's very difficult to believe in any prophecy over me because I know exactly who I am. But somebody had a prophecy over me. And that prophecy to this day has not failed. But I was a goner. You could see through my skin. I had to be fed with a dropper. Liquids had to be dripped into my mouth during that time. I was tiny. I could fit in one hand from head to toe in one hand. Isn't that funny? From head to foot. Nobody wanted to touch me. You could see right through into my internal organs, heartbeat, skull was not developed anything. They just knew I was going to kick the bucket, but I didn't. And I was tiny for a long time. Then all of a sudden, something happened. And so here I am. Here I am. But my life has been strange from day one. Plagued with dreams my entire life. My entire life. And one of the more intimate dreams I had was at the age of 8 or 10. I can't remember which one. I remember when I was an infant. Isn't that funny? I remember taking my first steps. I do. And it really messes up your parents when you remember the conversations they had when you were only a few months old, right? Messes. So I know babies comprehend. I know they do. They don't see in color all the time. And when they're presented color, it's going to do something to their appetites. But but there are gaps in my life too. I can remember infancy. I can remember certain times when I was very small before I could walk, and a little bit after I could walk. But there are large gaps in other portions I don't remember. Like my teenage years, I scarcely remember my teenage years. Scarcely. From the age of 12 and up, I cannot remember. All the way till I was 17. I cannot remember when I was 16. I can't. Can't remember when I was 15. Can't remember when I was 14. I do remember when I was 12. So it had memory gaps and things like that. But other than being halfway insane, I came out okay. I'm all right. Somebody said they can remember back to 3 years old. Yeah, I did. I can remember conversations, motives, things that happened intimately. And the strange thing is I had comprehensions. Never think your child is not listening, that they're listening. They also comprehend. They just can't communicate. And I remember communicating with everybody else. And I would get angry because they couldn't hear a word I was saying. They couldn't understand anything. And that would frustrate me. I remember that when I was little. It was probably gibberish. I also remember eating a whole box of X-Lax. That was when I kind of fell off the bed and crawled and kind of knocked it off it was a nightstand there where I was at, and got a hold of it because I was every time I would see him, I wanted it. So I finally got it. Anyway, so children are quite special. And if you remember when you're that young, guaranteed you remember somebody near you all the time. It's almost like you were leaving somebody. Somebody was there watching, like they were watching only for a certain time, and then they were leaving, and you knew they were leaving, and you would be left in this world. I remember that very well. Like it was an overseer or something that I could never see, but I knew they were right there. Right there. Strange. I do remember that, though. Okay, I still don't see Sister Mary's question. It could be, Sister Mary, do me, okay. No, never mind. I already answered that. You guys are getting me off kilter here. But anyway, that's the story of my beginnings. So, you know what, though? It has, my parent, I had a parent in the military. And this thing goes in my family. So obviously, I've been put in some predicaments, right? So I was in the military likewise because it's a family thing. And, but everybody has strangeness they go through. Lord knows I had my share of strangeness. And I think my serious years were I always believed in the Lord, always. But I think I became real serious after a couple of things that took place, right? And after they took place, there was no way I could be normal again. And then that was obviously known about, and a special recruitment took place a couple times in my life. And I was utilized for things. I found myself in the wrong place at the right time, I guess. Or you could say the wrong place at the wrong time. And with that, I'll say this. There are a couple of things I know about that people are going to face. And I just refuse to lay down the charge. If people are not prepared for these things, it's going to really work something on them, right? It's going to mess people up if they don't know about them. The Lord let us know. We don't quite have a context yet. So the more things are disclosed, the more things that happen, and the more that we see, right, in our reality, not the more things they disclose, because a lot of people lie. A lot of people are lying right now, even about disclosure. But the more things that people go through, right, then the more we can narrow down certain pieces of information that will be quite helpful in your life. Somebody says USMC 10 years, Semper Fi. Semper Fi, Semper Fidelis. Multi-branches of services here. That's always troubling, isn't it? When you're a multi-branch individual. Anyway, guys, listen, I'm not going to hold you hostage. I want you guys to be safe. People are somewhat out of their minds, right? And somebody says, is there any truth to the report 800 children rescued from barges off the coast of California? Off the coast of California, off the coast of Florida, and Puerto Rico. There's often cases of hundreds of people being rescued from boats. They normally don't let those stories out because they're very common, extremely common. This world in several places is quite desperate as the fires continue to build. It's going to increase. It will increase. As that increases, things will change. Our geology is really about to change for the worst. And some people are going to be very uncomfortable with some of the moves they're going to have to make. These are truly different times. But don't ever for one moment believe that the Lord is not with you. Never say you're by yourselves, because you're not. You're not. Right? You're not. And folks, be vigilant, right? We all know what this day is, the Independence Day, right? I like to think of it this way, because this day does remind me of those who fought for the right causes in history. They did. They fought to make the freedoms we now enjoy possible. Even though those freedoms can sometimes be skewed, we're blessed. We're still blessed. There are places, other countries that do not have these opportunities, right? We're blessed. We really are blessed. And for those who fought for the causes of freedom, I salute them personally, right? I do not desire to throw away what they died for. That's what this day truly marks. The Day of Independence really marks those who actually fought the good fight for us. They fought for us. We, in turn, fight for our children, correct? We don't know what time the Lord is coming back, and we can always fight for our children. It's a good day to remember that. I know they turned it into some big holiday that has nothing to do with independence, right? I know they did that. But I, for one, remember the absolute cause of that. I do. Folks, I know you hear that popping and crackling back there. You hear that popping and crackling? Can you guys hear that? It's quite loud. You guys be blessed. I will see you guys tomorrow right here at the Council of Time. We may have a midnight hour. I know what tomorrow is. See, what's tomorrow here, guys? Tomorrow is it that day? Yes. Tomorrow's going to be Wacky Wednesday. Let me see what it is. Yep. See, when we talk about authority is yours if, it's going to be for a very good cause, right? To appreciate authority is to first realize how you've lost control. It is. That's what you have to realize first. It takes an admittance. But then the authorities you actually have, better right there in your Bibles, better almost non-disputable. Some people, because they don't know it, will never utilize those authorities. You have them right now. Be in position. This is another day zero, right, on calendar zero. But I hope that today, yesterday's message is still on your mind. And I hope that today you can be content with what the Lord has provided you thus far, understanding that you're in the middle of a process. We would call that a painstaking process. You're not by yourselves. But with heaviness, the Lord is with you in this process. With heaviness, it is by no means easy upon those who love you the most, which is your Father in heaven and the Lord Jesus Christ. And they have faith in you. Guys, I'm going to see you next time right here at the Council of Time. God bless and keep you. I'll see you guys next time.